Options mean everything to the in-focus photographer. Yet many are hindered in their approach to creative photography by their own misconceptions. A door is a door instead of a rectangle. A tree is a tree instead of a leading line. And their shutter controls blur instead of how much light they're allowing into their camera. The amount and type of blur you can use is the result of the aperture chosen. It has nothing to do with the shutter. The shutter simply opens and closes. Blur comes from how much light is used and how things within the frame are moving. Blur to the in-focus photographer is a tool of communication. We use it to isolate messages, such as the flowers, twigs, and leaves you've been shooting for this week's exercises. If you want a blurry background, choose a larger hole. The shutter speed is a direct consequence of that initial choice. Since the hole was large, then the amount of light needed to make the message lit well was small. The sensor didn't need a lot of light since the hole was big to begin with. But if you use a smaller hole, which would give you more depth of field, depth of focus if you like, then the shutter would have to stay open longer to add the appropriate amount of light. If you shot with a faster shutter speed now, all you'd get is a dark image. Slower shutter speeds come with their own set of consequences, of course. If something or someone moves during the exposure, they may be blurry. Now that isn't a bad thing, it just is. Blur may happen at slower shutter speeds, which is why when we meet next, you'll be shown how to properly hold your camera during longer exposures. But that does not mean that we are trying to eliminate blur. Blur is an important option and should be thought of as such. Blurry images can be beautiful. Many new photographers see blur as a problem and shy away from shooting at slower shutter speeds. They whine, but Rod, I want my kids in focus and they just won't stop moving. Well, I hope they don't stop moving. Life and your children move. Let them. First off, who says that every message has to be frozen? Have you never heard of panning with your subject before? People hide from slow shutters and proper hand-holding techniques. They turn to the flash to add light. They turn to the ISO to give them better options. Or worse yet, they turn to the camera manufacturers and they get suckered into using tools such as in-camera and on-the-lens image stabilization systems. Do yourself a favor and embrace slow shutters. Learn to hold your camera steady. Learn all the options before you jump to those now automated by society. A message does not have to be razor sharp to be effective. But some of the most famous and moving messages were not shot with the best camera, they were not captured with image stabilization, and, believe it or not, may even have a blurry subject or two within the frame. So if and when you have to shoot with a slow shutter, and you will, and you end up with a few blurry images, well, good. Deal with it. That's photography. If you don't like the outcome of your choices, then fix it. Make different choices. Hold your camera steady. Get upset with yourself. I think the point is to think about messages instead of just things. Is crisp focus really needed for me to make my point? And is it possible that blur may actually enhance my message? Well, these are the things that we think about. These are the important things to an in-focus photographer. Once you free yourself of that fast shutter mentality, you'll be doing yourself and the rest of the world quite a bit of good. So good luck. Don't be afraid of slow shutters, and we'll see you next week.